friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I'm here today to talk about just some of my antique and vintage pieces I've been collecting over the years, and partly because I thought some of you would just enjoy this, especially after the short I did on the coal iron and how popular it was. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit more about some of these things and also why I collect antique and vintage pieces. And it isn't just because I love them and I do use a lot of them as decor, but they serve a much greater purpose than that. Sometimes I either shop specifically for vintage or antique items that I need, such as the high chair that I got for the babies. I wanted something that would not only look cool and vintage or antique, but something that would be useful. And so we bought that, and it's been definitely handy when we're having family dinners in here. And all three of the grandbabies so far have used it. And then this piece here was something I did also look for specifically. And what this is an agitator for laundry. So I use this in my off-grid setup. Now, I don't wash my clothes all the time off-grid, but when Patrick first built that setup, that was the other thing I also looked for specifically, was a good working wringer that would not only look cool and antique, but would work. And I love that thing. So as soon as we got the setup all put together, I immediately went to practicing on that and was washing clothes every day, using that for a time, just so I could get the hang of it, the feel for it, and find the things that work best. So I did a video on it maybe back in 2020 when we had to finally replace our old electric washing machine. And so I didn't have one. And because it was 2020, it took us 6 weeks to get the new one. So I fell back on that off-grid setup, and I'm so thankful I have it. But anyway, this is actually, I think, a 1940s piece. My wringer just now achieved antique status because it is from 1924. So it is 100 years old, thus making it antique. So if you don't know how that works, 100 years old and up makes it antique. Anything is 20 years old to 100 years old would be in the vintage category. So there's a lot of things I have that are vintage and a lot of things I have that are antique. So this coal iron was actually gifted to me that you saw the short on. And it was gifted to me by Two Family Homestead several years back when I was talking about wanting to get an antique iron. At the time I was looking for one that I could just heat up on the wood stove. I didn't even know they made this kind. And so Sherry had this and she said, "Hey, would you like it?" And I said, "Sure." And so she sent it to me. So how it works is you put your coals inside the iron there, and then it heats up, and then you iron your clothes. And you can find some, in fact, I found a really cool video the other day, and I'll link to the guy's channel down below, where he shows the one he has is much bigger than this one. So I'm guessing he might have one that weighs as much as 9 pounds. This, as is, weighs just over 4 pounds, but they can weigh as much as 9 pounds. And even though for now it's just a decorative piece that I keep in my laundry area, I also like knowing I have it in case I ever need to do ironing and it's the middle of winter and we're not getting enough solar power, or something happens to our solar power and we just can't use it at all. We almost always will have a fire going in the middle of winter, and I can just put some coals in there and iron whatever I need to iron. Usually the only thing I need to iron is because it's something I'm sewing. It's usually the only time. Right here is, I think I figured out it was a long time ago, I dated it, but it's actually made in Italy, and I did a video on it years ago, and I believe early 1940s, I think. This one was actually gifted to me from my father quite a number of years ago. I don't know the age of this oil lantern here. It is brass. I picked it up at a garage sale for a few dollars. When I did a little looking around, it could be as old as 1890, but it might not be that old. But anyway, I love the look of it. Even if it isn't antique, it still has that antique look that I love. Now, another thing I came across at a garage sale for $1 was this. And I was so thrilled when I found it. Back then, I liked to chomp on ice quite a bit. And we had to get rid of our refrigerator that had the ice crusher in it, or it just never worked very well. And we had to get a new refrigerator, and I wanted as simple a refrigerator as I could find. As simple as I could find. In fact, I would go for an older refrigerator that still works. But at any rate, I happened to see this for $1 at a garage sale. And I think, well, you can kind of tell by the colors that I think it's like early 70s, but it's an ice crusher. You put your ice in there in the top and you crush your ice. So I have used this quite a few times, not so much recently, but it is definitely a handy piece. And I love the fact that it is green because green is one of my very favorite colors. And this is something I picked up more of a decorative piece, but I like having it in case I ever need it. And it is a cast iron teapot that was most likely made in Japan. I picked it up at our local antique store, which we do actually have one in our little town. And then back here, I don't even remember, I think somebody gifted this one to me, this cast iron kettle. And this would be something I would use not for making tea, but more for, though we don't need to do this anymore because I always have laundry hanging and that puts moisture in the air, because wood stoves can be very drying to the air and cause you to have nosebleeds and other things. So being able to put moisture back in the air is important, and that's what I would use this for if I ever needed to. And right now I just like to leave it looking rusty because it looks cool. Down here I have several different trivets cast iron trivets I picked up. Now I did just recently do a video on my off-grid kitchen because we are not entirely off-grid. Some people mistakenly assume we are, even though I say repeatedly we are kind of a 50-50. We partially off-grid. So we have public power, public water, but we also have our own rainwater collection. We also have solar power, and we also have a wood stove and many other ways that we can do things without public electricity or even solar power. So these things I picked up at garage sales. I don't know how old any of them are, but I'm pretty sure most of them are at least vintage. And this one here, this would be something you would actually use with an iron, which was the main reason I got this. You would set your hot iron on top of this, whether it be the coal iron or the regular sad iron, this one you just heat up on a wood stove. And that way you're not burning whatever it is that you're setting it on. I have a second one here. This one's actually a Griswold, but the feet on it are much shorter than this. That's an important thing to me, to have both kinds. Now this one I actually just hang up in the kitchen as a decorative piece. This one is one of the several I use next to the wood stove. This is one that has a little bit shorter feet than this one. This one has longer feet. They all serve their purpose because that helps me adjust the temperature of whatever I'm doing on the wood stove. So if you want more information on that, I'll link to that video down below. This here just represents a few of many vintage and antique books that I have. I started collecting them years ago, and I was collecting them not just because they were cool, but because of the fact that I wanted some good classic books. Some of the kids' books I have were books that were culled from libraries, and they go back to the 40s and 50s. I have some old readers that are late 1800s, and even this book here, you can see there's quite a few more books. There's several more books back here, there, and there. The four that I have here are all kids' books, but I have books of all kinds. In fact, this light green one back here is Food Gardens for Defense. I think that was from the 1940s. And just all kinds of different, like cookbooks, medical books, and whatnot. And some are 100 years old or more. A lot of them are from the 40s through the 60s. This one looks the oldest. It's pretty tattered. And I think this is, what is this, Aesop's Fables. And if I remember correctly, this is late 1940s. But this one here is actually 1909. So, and it's the first in a series of books. And it looks brand new. I picked up the whole series at a garage sale for $2. So obviously somebody had bought the set and never used it, and it sat in somebody's attic for years and years. And then they put it in a garage sale and sold it for $2. There's 10 books in the series. So what they did is every year they came out with a new book for the 10-year span. And the first book, this would be for very little kids. And with each book, the stories are more for older kids all the way up to high school, college age. So this one here, we've actually been, well, Patrick has been reading to Jackson, and it has a lot of your classic nursery rhymes in there. It's been really great having these books on hand. Right here, this one isn't near as old, but I even used this one for my own kids. It's a third grade reader. Yeah, this one's 1961. And it was just really nice to have this both for my kids and now for my grandkids. I just think that's the way to go. And what you'll also find, especially when it comes to readers, and like the ones I mentioned that I have, I didn't get them down because I actually have them put up because they're pretty delicate because they're so old. I got them at a local auction actually. And just when you read through these books that are meant for that were originally meant for kids, you know, 4th grade, you might just go, wow, kids at 4th grade could read that. And you'll find the same in any of these older books, which is another reason why I wanted older books, because they're not the dumbed down versions like so much of what we see today. And then when it comes to equipment, you know, I want things that either like this iron or this that were made to be able to use without electricity. I also want things that are built well. You know, this too, without electricity, or this coffee grinder. But I also want things that were built well, because things back then were built better than things are built now. I also have a cheese grater I didn't bring out here that I bought just a couple of years ago. And I think that one was made in the 70s. And I love that cheese grater. So it's a hand crank cheese grater. So if I ever need to grate, because I hate grating cheese by hand, but if I ever need to grate a whole bunch at a time, I can just stick it in there. I'll grate a bunch of it up and I'm ready to go. And I love that thing. Another thing is my silver teapot. You'll see that a lot in a lot of my videos, especially anything where I'm talking about tea. I bought it at a garage sale. I knew it was, the main reason I bought it was because it was silver. And it was only $5 at a garage sale. But when we cleaned it up really well, we were able to see the markings and figure out that it was actually from World War II, from a captain's quarters on a naval ship. And so that just made it all the more cool. But I use that every single day. That's what I brew my tea in every single day. And then a few other things I wanted to mention is that Patrick also has collected different vintage and antique tools over the years, some of them hand tools, but also even power tools, such as his circa 1950s drill press, his metal lathe that he figures is about 1947, and then his wood lathe that we think is 1970-ish, around in there. And it's a brute, that one. And he got good deals on all these, just shopping around, hitting garage sales, watching like the wood lathe. That was one at the school. They were getting all new tools, and that was one of the things they were selling for really cheap. So he got that and a few other things. And so these are things that are dependable. And he knows how to be able to get in there. In fact, he did a video on repairing something that went wrong with the wood lathe. And he did a video on that. If you'd like to learn more about that, I'll link to that down below. And he's also done a few videos with the metal lathe as well as drill press. The drill press was one of the very early videos that we did. And so I'll link to those down below if I remember to get them all in there. Anyway, so for me, it's not even just about, because ever since I can remember, I have loved anything antique, always just fascinated with antique things. Oh, I know one I forgot to mention was my spinning wheel, which is also late 1800s, that I have yet to really use yet. I have to learn how to use it, but life got too busy and I haven't had time to really sit down and work with it, but I have it. And I'm just so glad I have that thing. And it's a beautiful piece, but it can also be useful if it ever comes to that point where I want to start spinning my own yarn. So for me, I try to look for pieces that are not only cool pieces just to have as decor, but pieces I know that I can either use right away or fall back on in the case I need to. So I don't want to have just useless pieces around. If you're liking pieces like this, it's really not a bad idea to consider collecting things, but making sure they are workable, usable pieces in case you want to use them right away, or you want to be able to fall back on them, like my ringer and my agitator right here. So I hope you enjoyed this video, just seeing some of the things I have. And again, I know there's a lot more I'm forgetting to mention, but because this has been something I've been doing for quite a number of years. So anyway, any thoughts, ideas, or pieces that you've collected over the years that you just love and you've been able to use, please share with us in comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.